Let's talk about anger today. Today is all about anger management. So, anger is part of the grieving process, but we don't often talk about it. In fact, it rarely comes up in a lot of the work that I do with women because it's a scary thing to admit that you're angry. You know, it's one of the emotions that we're taught not to really express as females. We're supposed to be in control of ourselves. And yet, when we're going through heartbreak and we don't allow ourselves to go through the process of letting go by anger, then we end up shoving it down deeper and deeper. And it manifests in really, really self destructive ways. So, today I'm going to be talking about anger management. I'm going to be talking about why we do it, the types of anger there are, and 3 of my favorite techniques to manage anger. So, as I said, anger is part of the grieving process. It's a significant part of the steps that you need to take. And as with all grieving processes, in order to get through grief, you have to go through all of the stages and allow the expression of all of the stages in a healthy manner. So for us women, we really want to focus on self-care more than anything else because we're hurting, our heart is aching, and as much as the self-care is absolutely important, part of self-care is also dealing with anger and how you feel, the frustration around where you are right now, the fact that things aren't fair in your life. You had a plan, you did it all right, and all of a sudden everything is blown up and nothing's right anymore. So dealing with the anger and the frustration of it's not about pinpointing or pointing fingers at particular people, although that's part of it. What I want to help you realize is that anger is essential and that we need to move through it in a safe and healthy manner so that it doesn't explode in other areas of your life. So, why don't we deal with anger? Well, we allow it to fester and then it comes out as volcanic eruptions. And I know this firsthand when we are so angry about something and we just shove it down. And I see this all the time. I see women say, well, I've forgiven him, or I'm just really disappointed. And those are great words and great feelings to have. But underneath, there's anger. And that anger has to come out somehow. So what happens is if we shove it down, it ends up becoming a really strong inner critic voice, right? Then we start blaming ourselves and we start sabotaging our lives. And on the other hand, what could also happen is when you really shove down that anger, it explodes later in life when you get triggered for some other reason. And this is where we have uncontrollable episodes of rage because we haven't dealt with the anger from a previous hurt. And when you're shoving it down and it turns into, oh, I'm disappointed, and then it turns into a passive aggressive type of release. So we don't want that either. So I'm going to share with you 3 techniques that I use with my clients at the end of this talk. But first, I want to just break down what anger is so you understand exactly where it shows up in your life. So anger is considered a secondary emotion. It's a reaction to something, and it's linked to either a physical or a mental injury. It could be, of course, a lack of something or frustration. And of course, when we're in heartbreak and we've broken up or we're going through divorce, it is clearly an anger over the situation because you absolutely were blindsided, or your ex cheated on you, or they are taking advantage of you. Whatever the story is, It is a perfectly acceptable reaction and emotion to what you're currently experiencing. Most people are able to conceal it in some way, but there are various degrees of anger, and a person can experience anything from like a mild annoyance, like for example, somebody annoys you at work, or your boss doesn't really hear you. It's just really annoying that he's not taking you into consideration. Or you could be dating somebody new and you're mildly annoyed at the fact that they're not maybe giving you enough notice to change plans, or they're not really hearing you when you're expressing a concern about something. So it could be just a mild annoyance, like a little red flag, right? But according to Planète Santé out of Switzerland, they have um, they have listed anger in 3 types. So the first one is a defensive behavior that occurs following an aggression. So of course, somebody's aggressive towards you, your first reaction is to get angry and get aggressive. It's a form of defense. Perfectly acceptable. Then there's premeditated aggressive behavior, and this is what we see as passive aggressive or withholding. Withholding is also a really good technique that we do if we're angry. So you could be angry at your ex, you could be angry at somebody in your life. So you decide to withhold a kindness or withhold something that would be considered something that they need or if they asked you for. So you're premeditatively withholding or premeditatively setting up some sort of aggressive behavior. And then the third one is impulsive anger, which is impossible to control and translate to aggressive action. So this is like that volcanic eruption I was talking about. So you've shoved down your anger, months, years, and then somebody says something that triggers you and you just see red. There's no controlling it whatsoever. You're immediately propelled back into that very first hurt, and your reaction is decisive, it's quick, and it is your primitive brain, of course, reacting to that. It's almost like a survival thing. It is very forceful, and it comes from a very deep place of wounding. So like all levels of grief though, anger, when it isn't resolved completely, stays in your body and it festers and it manifests into aches and pains. And depending on where it is in your body, it could really have a significant direct response to a thought that you are having or a fear that you are having. So, like, say, becoming, like I said before earlier, becoming aggressive, passive aggressive, right? In a situation that doesn't really warrant a sort of snarky, angry response, right? And you know that, you've seen that plenty of times, and perhaps you're dealing with that type of behavior and you've just recognized it in yourself and you want to deal with it in a really productive way. So our jobs are to heal from heartbreak completely and to make sure that we flow through all of the levels of grief. So there's shock and trauma, anger and denial, isolation, and finally acceptance. You can't bypass isolation. You can't bypass and say, well, I've accepted it and I'm not angry anymore. And although you say that, you're still exhibiting passive aggressive behavior towards your ex or towards your children or anybody else who is currently in a sort of role that is similar to a previous situation, right? A previous relationship. So I just want to say you have every right to be angry at your situation right now, especially if you're dealing with a divorce or a separation, or you're in a relationship which is frustrating because you can't seem to physically get out of it because of where we are in the world right now. But yet there's nothing there holding you to that person, and yet you have to stay there. So how do you manage this anger? Instead of stuffing it down and telling yourself stories like, I'm unworthy, or I feel shame around this, or maybe the stories around the unjustifiable losses that you've suffered during this process. Let's get out of these stories and into our bodies again and know that the only way out of this type of anger is through it. So I want to share with you 3 techniques that I use with my clients all the time. These are really effective, and it depends on what level of anger you're in. So the first technique that I want to share with you is if you're in a situation where you are simply annoyed with somebody that you need to see every single day, such as a boss, coworker, even a friend who exhibits behavior that, you love this friend, but there's certain things that they do that just are clearly annoying to you, right? So I want to introduce you to this concept called willing hands. This is a technique that diffuses anger, minimal anger, when you have to confront somebody or you have to deal with somebody on a regular basis. So it could be a boss, anybody. And note that if there's any passive aggressive energy with this person, this isn't going to work for you. Then you got to do the next one. So this is when there is nothing else. There's no other deep anger linking to somebody, but there's just an annoyance that you have to deal with. You don't know what it is. You don't have any emotional attachment to it. This is called willing hands. So when you confront that person, I want you to put your hands up in this position. This position is an openness, and it signals to your body that you are open and that you're not going to confront that person, that you're not in this type of scenario, right? Can you see this? Yeah, so you're not like closing off or turning the other way or scowling at them. So this technique is all about opening up your hands. So if you're sitting, just place your hands in this open, sort of vulnerable position. Yeah? And or if you're standing, just put them beside your hands. If you do yoga, this is like mountain pose. And this is the same sort of idea. And this is where it came from. Willing hands. So you're willing to be open. You're not defensive. You're not going to be aggressive. That's what that signals. Okay? So remember, willing hands. Got it? Great. So the next one is when you are emotionally attached to somebody. There is an emotional sort of linkage. Okay, there's a story. And then when you are in a conversation and they've triggered you and anger wells up because you're really annoyed with how they spoke to you or even the phrasing, even though there might not have been any intention on their part, it's landing with you because you've got a lot of anger that you've shoved down, and you're automatically going to a place that might not really apply to the context of this conversation, but you are still having a reaction. So as soon as you know what that reaction is, I want you to do the countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What this does is it helps your brain process the information of what just happened. It helps your brain move from the limbic system or the primitive brain to the rational brain. Okay? It takes 2 to 3 to 4 seconds for that information to move to the rational brain so that you can analyze what the situation is so you can have a proper response. But if we don't allow that time to process exactly what they said and how they said, you're going to have a reaction that might be inappropriate for the situation. Okay? So, countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Allow the information to get to your rational brain in order to respond appropriately. Okay? And now the third one is an active one. This technique is for when you are really in the depths of trauma or the depths of your heartbreak, the depths of your, like, full on into your divorce process, and you are just beside yourself with disappointment and anger and the way things are going. This is a technique that's really important because we aren't, again, we've been shut down in how to express ourselves, especially as females. We're not encouraged to go out and scream at hockey games and baseball games, and we don't have easy outlets to express our anger. Sure, you could be going to the gym every day, but that's a whole other scenario, right? Sure, you could be punching the punching bag. Great. But I don't want you to hurt yourself. I want to give you a technique that you can use anytime you need to. This technique you must do in the safety of your car or in the pillow of your bed, somewhere where you're going to have privacy and you're going to be able to let it rip. We need to unstuck the energy that's in our throat, the unjust feelings that we're having get lodged in our throat as women, and we shut our voices down by shoving this anger down. So this is where it's so important for you to release it. Doesn't have to be logical. This is about not going into the rational brain. The only rational part is getting to your car, closing up the windows, making sure you're not close to anybody, and screaming at the top of your lungs. Go right to red. Just scream it all out. If you're not able to get into a car where it's safe, then get into your bed and scream into your pillow. Just let it rip. This is essential for making sure this energy doesn't lodge in your body. Okay, so I gave you 3 techniques. The first one is willing hands for when someone's annoying you and there's no real emotional attachment. Then there is the countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is when you allow your rational brain to kick in so that you can respond in a controlled manner rather than reacting. Okay, and then the final one, of course, one of my favorites. I'm all about getting it out of your body. So screaming it out in the safety of your car or in your pillow in your bedroom. Okay? Listen, I know anger is a scary thing. I deal with women who are so afraid of their energy, afraid of the disappointment, the anger, the sadness, the fear, and they shove it down, and we shove it down constantly. So I want you to feel safe by using these techniques. Know that you have power over all of your emotions, and you can release the anger in your body. Release it so that you become freer, lighter, so that it doesn't turn into an illness, doesn't get lodged in your body somewhere. Release it in a healthy manner. Avoid the passive-aggressive behavior. Avoid the welling up of the volcano eruption that eventually happens if you keep shoving that anger down. Okay? So allow yourself to move through anger in a safe and healthy manner by using the 3 techniques that I just shared. And continue healing. Continue going through your grieving process. And stay connected. Have a great day. Until next time.